I have not attended any public function or addressed an audience as distinguished as this. There is an anecdote about what happened in one of the courts in the Supreme Court where G. Ramaswamy was appearing. I believe his argument offended the judges, and one of them said, "Mr. Ramaswamy, you think we are fools?" So Ramaswamy was a very witty person. He paused for a little while and said, "My lords, I cannot answer that question." I said, "Why?" He says, "If I say yes, I'll be in contempt. But if I say no, I will be committing perjury. So I cannot answer that question." Very wittily he avoided the situation. I was also reminded of a couplet by Kashmiri Lal Zakir. I think Dua Sahab would have known him because Dua Sahab was in Chandigarh for a long time and Mr. Zakir was the secretary of the Urdu Academy in Haryana. There's an Urdu Academy. Oh, is it Kashmiri Lal Zakir? Aha. I was surprised when I came to know that there is a Urdu Academy in Haryana. A very pleasant surprise. So I spoke on one of the functions in Chandigarh High Court, and the next day Tribune carried a news item, Chief Justice speaks in chaste Urdu. And lo and behold, within a few days, I receive a letter from this gentleman, Kashmiri Lal Zakir, saying, "I want to meet you because I believe you know Urdu, and I am the president of, secretary of the Haryana Urdu Academy." So I was also very keen to see what is Urdu doing in Haryana. So he came and he handed over his books. He has written a number of books. And one of the books is his poetry book. And one of the couplets that struck me, very wise couplet, I would say, in which he says, "लफ्ज़ों से," words, लफ्ज़ is word, "लफ्ज़ों से तहरीरें लिखी जाती हैं." तहरीर is text. लफ्ज़ों से तहरीरें लिखी जाती हैं, लफ्ज़ों से तकरीरें लिखी जाती हैं. दुनिया वालों, लफ्ज़ों की ताज़ीम करो, respect the words. लफ्ज़ों से तकदीरें लिखी जाती हैं. So what do you say, when you say, in what way you say, is going to either make you or unmake you in life. You make the right kind of noise at the right place, it may help you. But if you make the right kind of noise at the wrong place, it is going to demolish you, it is going to destroy you. That is precisely why I decided that instead of the usual flow of what you see comes to your mind and speaking out your mind, you see, without any restraint, I may be a little more restrained in my expressions and in my words. So for a while I scribbled a few paragraphs which I will read out to you for whatever worth they are. We all know that independence and independent and fearless judiciary is the cornerstone of our constitutional edifice, committed to a federal system of governance. And we all firmly believe that judiciary is and shall always remain independent. Let us hope, that aspiration shall never be belied, so that neither our generation nor any of our future generations face the dark and dismal prospect of being served by a judiciary that is committed to any particular ideology or is too pliant and servile to be of any use to us are our children against injustice or tyranny. We all know how ADM Jabalpur has struck to the memory of the people of this country, and how it has evoked such severe criticism from jurists and from the civil society alike, some of whom have described it as the darkest hour of the Supreme Court. Such was the criticism and such was the anguish over the view taken by the Supreme Court in that case, that the author had to, years later, unburden his conscience by publicly apologizing for what he had said in that judgment. We have also seen how the threshold of tolerance for any misdemeanor on the part of any judicial functionary is so low that what may not make any news readily and merrily captures the banner headlines of newspapers if the incident involves a judge. Such deep and abiding is the hope and confidence of the people of this country in the independence and fairness of the judiciary that any compromise on those values is wholly unacceptable. Independence of judiciary is and shall therefore remain non-negotiable. For we know that with a committed judiciary, neither the Constitution nor the high values it embodies will be safe. Fundamental rights, without a fearless judiciary to enforce them, will be a teasing illusion for the citizens. The federal character of our polity will tend to break under the overbearing and all-powerful centers of power. The eternal values of universal brotherhood, secularism, and an inclusive society will be in jeopardy, and so shall the dream of an egalitarian and casteless society where equal opportunity for all is an attainable goal only if the judiciary lends a helping hand to the oppressed and the less fortunate in our society. Individuals apart, even institutions will buckle under authoritarian regimes should no succor come for their protection from the judiciary. The Election Commission, the Public Service Commission, the Comptroller and Auditor General's Office, all of whom have discharged their functions under the watchful patronage of the Supreme Court, will be exposed to the vagaries of executive indiscretions and excesses. All this and much more is at stake should judiciary fail the people of this country. And yet, we tend to take things for granted. That, in my view, is a mistake. Like our hard-earned freedom and the sovereignty of this country, we have to work for the protection and preservation of our hallowed institution that is the last hope for the teeming millions when they face hopelessness. Recent developments are eye-opening for all discerning citizens generally and the legal fraternity in particular. Breaking away from tradition, 4 senior judges of the Supreme Court brought into public domain certain issues which have hogged the limelight and given to the media and the politicians an opportunity to talk about and discuss matters which can and indeed ought to have been addressed and solved within the confines of the Supreme Court. Political parties and politicians have accused each other of playing politics in the sordid affair. But let us acknowledge that no media house, no political party, and no politician who is sensitive to the development on the institutional front can be accused of any indiscretion when the judges of the Supreme Court make a public statement that democracy in this country is in danger. When a strong and disturbing statement like selling of souls by judges appears on the national hookup and in the print media. When judges want the nation to decide issues which they can and ought to decide themselves. Anyone who is connected to the institution in any way, and even dispassionate observers would feel disturbed by the developments where judges are unable to decide issues concerning the working of their institution and seek to take the same to the public at large. Thanks to the media, the nation has known about the issues, but one has yet to see the nation's decision on them. This may be disappointing for some of us, but let us acknowledge that an appeal to the nation to decide was not what would help the judges. I firmly believe that judges need not look for outside help for resolving their institutional problems. There is a tremendous reservoir of talent in the Supreme Court which can and ought to be used for finding solutions. The judges have to look within and not without for guidance. The nation trusts them for their wisdom and would be happy if they use it for solving not only the problems of others, but their own problems also. Judges ought to rise above their individual prejudices, if any, and think collectively in the interests of the institution and the future of this country. And for this act of kindness, the nation will remain beholden to them. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you, and thank you very much. Jai Hind.
The recent debate on the role of judiciary, its independence, has also come up in light with the dichotomy of rule of law and rule by law. Perhaps what had happened in Goa and Karnataka, politically though, and its dealing by the judiciary, have partially given to me a thought of understanding the concept of rule by law and rule of law. I am sure our next speaker, very eminent journalist, and a person who had always been known for not sparing any word in expressing his thoughts, Mr. H.K. Dua, the eminent journalist and former editor-in-chief for too many newspapers, would highlight on this.
And the kind of the warning that emerges from his speech, and then Chief Justice Thakur's well-considered words, and each word had a meaning. And he was meticulous enough to put it down and then speak, lest some of my colleagues might, former colleagues, I'm a former one, so they are the present colleagues, some of them may misquote him, so he was being very, very careful. But what he said, that the threat to independence of judiciary has a wider meaning than just to threat to the independence of judiciary. The fact is, all constitutional institutions in India, Parliament, judiciary, of course, media, which derives its strength from the Constitution of India, political parties themselves, who can operate only when there is a freedom left in the country and democracy left, and constitutional institutions which former Chief Justice of India has listed, which always can come to which function in the umbrella of the Supreme Court, and that's why they're able to exercise their independence, like CAG. Election Commission. I haven't come across a judgment of the Supreme Court, maybe there was one or two minor instances, where Election Commission's authority has not been upheld by the Supreme Court, always. UPSC. Insidious attempts now are being made to bring everything under the control of the executive, where power is wielded by a few. And any questioning of that power is scorned and action taken suitably to curb such instances again. If such transgression takes place, it is considered as transgression. Let's look at Parliament itself. The way money bills are being, in ordinary legislation, money bills are being declared money bills by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, so that you prevent the bill to be discussed, scrutinized, discussed and passed by the upper house. Nobody to question. The entire budget of Parliament of a nation of 1.3 billion people, lakhs and lakhs of crore of rupees are involved, and Parliament derives its power, essential power, from sanctioning of the budget, which Lok Sabha sanctions, but it is also discussed in the Rajya Sabha appropriation bill. Then it's returned to the Lok Sabha. The procedure is well laid out. It was passed by this Parliament in half an hour's time, and nobody felt ashamed of it. The main sanction authority of Parliament and Parliament's independence and whatever it has control of the events actually started historically from when it got the power from in England, power to sanction money for expenses. The fundamental source of power, it has been attacked lately. So many instances. The behavior of the political parties, which derives functioning from the Constitution, you have seen the behavior of the people. MLAs had to be carted away to some hotel, saved from the poachers. The drama has been enacted if they are sheep, goats or sheep. The counting of the heads has taken place. I think last night it was pointed out to the Supreme Court that majority is being disturbed in the hotels than in the house. So whichever the institution which serves the people of the country, institutions are meant to serve the people of the country, and Constitution is well defined, is one of the noblest documents of the world constitutions. Within 17 years, we're frittering away what we got after 100 years of freedom struggle. Parliament is failing the people of the country. Executive is trying to cut into its power viciously so that they can use this power without any questions being asked. But on the first casualty of the question in Parliament has been the question hour, day in, day out, because ministers have to explain their conduct or decisions of the government for which they don't want to give explanation to Parliament, representatives of the people. What happens in the assemblies? They're supposed to meet once in 6 months. That is the constitutional provision. But so many bills will be pending, so many ordinances are issued for effect. The assembly meets for 3-4 days for form's sake, and that is abuses are exchanged between opposition leader and the chief minister. So where the amendment which was passed when opposition people were in the jail? Parliament was totally a part of the House, maybe in a majority, and that's passed 42nd Amendment. I think it was 42nd Amendment. And extended the tenure of Parliament, which is never done. How can you extend the... There was no emergency otherwise, but that one which was declared. But what happened to Mrs. Gandhi? The country did not accept the emergency Raj, which was an arrogant exercise of power. Now there's no emergency, formal emergency, but intentions are the same, and attempts are more insidious attempts are being to undermine independence of the judiciary, as well as the powers of parliament, powers of other wings of the government and autonomous bodies also. So the danger is much worse. So when Justice Thakur says, or Justice Kailash Gambhir says that democracy is in danger, the manifestation of that danger is being already felt. It's a felt danger in every institution. You talk to anyone, it's palpable. And no answer is yet available. This is as much arrogance of the Raj as earlier. Once you are elected, with 11 seats the majority, you think you have the right to do everything. Nobody, no government has the right to have unquestioned, unconstitutional power. It has to be within the constitutional framework and the democratic framework. But apparently, their faith of the executive in democratic functioning or democratic polity, plural, inclusive, secular, it is not there. The faith which should inform the constitutional working of the Constitution at this time, that faith is getting diluted, deliberately being undermined, and that's why there is so much of tension in the country. In different walks of life, there's a total atmosphere. A single party majority should bring a peaceful atmosphere so that the country grows further. They come out with a policy decision which take the country forward. But there is a tension. Sometimes there are significant mention was made by Justice Thakur about the atmosphere of intolerance. Now, manifestation of intolerance from every state they are coming. No country with so much of intolerance can be creative in its use of its energy for the solving people's problem. 70 years after freedom, 30% of the people don't have access to the basic facilities in health, in education. 59 children die in Gorakhpur, Chief Minister's constituency, and nothing has happened. Nobody has been punished so far. 14 people die in ICU in one of the medical institutions in UP. Why? Because the wrong nitrogen gas has been fed rather than the medical nitrogen meant for medical. This is the governance. There are instances after instances from different states. A flyover collapses in Prime Minister's own constituency. And it's been built by a public sector undertaking. You have suspended possibly the head of that corporation. But the point is, if a flyover is crossed, this is symbolic of the system crumbling because of negligence or because of deliberate attempts to damage the system. Now, all this, where do people go? They have to approach the Kacheri. I'm always for independence, freedom of the press for two reasons. One, selfish reason because it has always protected freedom of the press. Second, it is protector of democracy in India. So they're attacking the independence of judiciary to have a designed aim to end the democracy in the country. That means they want to have concentration power in a few hands, which cannot be questioned by the judiciary. So what will happen then? The safety walls where the anger then will come out in the street. If you destroy the institution, then it spills over to the streets. Already, sections of society already are going into the street, Dalits, farmers, others who are element. And if they are joined by tomorrow unemployed, the signs are not that happy in the near future as they are projected on the TV channels, controlled by the proprietors which are influenced by the government. So the TV world of prosperity is not reflected at the ground situations elsewhere in the country. So this attack on the independence of judiciary is vicious, deliberate, and it is being held by, unfortunately, by creating division in the Supreme Court. And it is sad that the Supreme Court itself is divided, so then what happens to the high courts also, etc. That is the time where Chief Justice of India should have provided lead to unite the Supreme Court rather than bring about it, or preside over a divided Supreme Court. It doesn't help him, it doesn't help the country, and it's not the shield which has to protect the rights of protect the Constitution and the rights of the people, Kachari being the last hope. If that is cracked, how will it protect the Constitution and the rights of the people? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So thank you very much. I would request